Now, moving on to Kenya, where Uhuru Kenyatta became the country's fourth president when he secured just over 50% of the vote, eliminating the need for a runoff against his main rival, Raila Odinga. On assignment's Rebecca Ward caught up with Nairobi correspondent Gabe Joselow for some background on this. Let's take a look.
You know, it was interesting talking to people, especially in the lead up to the elections. I traveled up to the town of Eldoret, which was at the center of some of the violence last time. And I met up with a group of internally displaced people who are still displaced from 5 years later after the violence. And what was surprising to me, but not so surprising when you really think about it, they were voting for Kenyatta exclusively. These were members of his same ethnic group, and so they very much supported him for that reason. But it surprised me that they would be so devoted to somebody who was charged with creating the violence that displaced them 5 years ago. But the thing is, the ICC charges actually, somewhat ironically, helped to unite a lot of his supporters around him, because a lot of the people who supported Uhuru Kenyatta saw these charges as interference from the West. And so this was a line that he used a lot in his campaigning. The other thing is that his running mate, William Ruto, who will be the future deputy president as well, was also charged by the ICC. He's actually in a different case, and he's from the from the rival ethnic community that Mr. Kenyatta had been clashing with, or Mr. Kenyatta's supporters. So a lot of people would tell me that they were supporting this coalition between Kenyatta and Ruto.
The ethnic Kikuyu residents at the Naka displaced people's camp in the Rift Valley were driven from their homes by Kalenjin mobs following the last presidential election in Kenya. Years later, they're still waiting to be resettled by the Kenyan government. Camp resident Scholastica Wanjiru says she sees hope in the alliance of Kikuyu presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta and his Kalenjin running mate William Ruto.
It will help us very much because, as you can see, now they are telling us we are brothers and sisters. We have seen the fruits of their union and we are all together now.
What was his persona like when you saw him at press conferences or during the rallies leading up to the elections? Do you perceive him to be, a uniter of parties or of people?
I've never had a chance to interview him personally, but from what I've seen, he's a very charismatic guy. He's the son of Kenya's first president, and he carries with him a lot of that legacy. And he was really born into a life of politics, and you see that he adapts to that lifestyle with a lot of ease. It just seems to come very naturally to him. At the same time, he's not the most active or engaged lawmaker. He hasn't been in the past anyway. He's more of known as a businessman, of a socialite. And so you do see a lot of the charisma coming out. His first speech, though, when he was elected, was really impressive. A lot of observers thought that he did a really remarkable job, saying that he would promise to be a uniter, to work for all of Kenya, to work with members of all political parties, and it was a very strong and impassioned speech.
Now, you mentioned this already, the election violence of 2007, and that is what Mr. Kenyatta is indicted for. But this election has been seen by poll watchers as being credible. Is this part of the evolution, I guess, to democracy in Kenya?
I think a lot of people would say that this was really a marker for Kenya becoming a mature democracy. It's only Kenya's fourth president. They've only been independent since 1963, so it is a particularly young country. At the same time, there was violence on Election Day, and there was a killing of a number of police officers in Mombasa in a really horrendous and violent attack. But that story really got suppressed, pushed down almost intentionally by the local media. Even the foreign media didn't pick up on it very much, because going into the story, there was a lot of pressure for the media to report positively. So while it was on the surface very credible, you can't ignore a lot of the technical problems that took place in the election, a lot of the delays, and Mr. Kenyatta's main rival, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, is also challenging the results. So this election isn't really over yet. The impression overall is that it was positive, it was peaceful, we can't ignore that, but there were problems, and they're being looked at now.
VOA's Gabe Joselow spoke with On Assignment's Rebecca Ward.